Elizabeth, for coming in. Good to see you today. My chair's making noise. I'm downstairs today. Hope you had a wonderful evening and all of that. So I found this case and I thought, oh my gosh, that's pretty interesting. And it's about the bizarre case of Aubrey Trails. And you know, the one thing I found out about him was, as I was kind of watching some of it, it's kind of old, but he is actually diagnosed as a psychopath. And he plays this manipulation game with these cops to get them to try to figure out, did he do it or did he not do it? Did his girlfriend do it? Was his girlfriend there? Just a whole bunch of things. You know, it was, who walks behind the rows? My bad. It's children of Nebraska. Oh yeah, hey Sprinkled Donut. So glad you made it. Thank you, thank you. I was just talking about this case that I found. I thought it was kind of interesting. It's kind of old. I mean, this is like 6 or 7 years old, but it was Aubrey Trail. Now, he and his girlfriend, they would lure these girls over and with some offer a job or that kind of thing. But what was really going on, let me get this over here. Sorry, guys. Now, I'm just going to, he actually was sentenced for killing, what is her name? Yeah, I can say it. I'm not monetized. It doesn't matter. Her name is, his victim's name is, where is it? Right here. And they dismembered this poor little person. She was only like, her name is Sydney Luth, and she was only, I think, 24, something like that. She's very young, just a very beautiful girl. And when he starts talking to the police about this, he's like, well, I offered her $5,000 to do a job, and so she accepted to do the job for the $5,000. I gave her the money. Well, yeah, I gave her the money, but she never left the house. Well, she did leave the house, but in parts, right? So I came across the brief on this, and some of the other things that were on YouTube where he's talking about these crimes. The one thing that I find very interesting about all of these things is I like reading the brief. Now, I know we cannot read every, and I hooked up my other laptop today so I can actually see it better. You can't read every single page. Like this one is like 66 pages long. But there are parts of these briefs that actually tells you what happened. And things, you know, they're the important parts to the case. So anyway, I don't mean to stumble around a little bit, but you know, I always get nervous when I come on here because I'm always afraid I'm gonna lose my stream because of whatever mess I decided to do. But anyway, I'm just gonna drink all the drinks. So anyway, hope everybody had a good evening. So, Sprinkled Donuts, did you watch the members live last night for our great friend Jen Lou? She's got some pretty interesting things coming up. Yes, I rolled a little bit of my hair today. I still can't wash it. I got this treatment put on it. What's it called? A Brazilian blowout, because the ends were looking really dry. So I can't wash it till tomorrow because he said, wait 3 days. And I was like, ugh. You know, it looks, anyway. Well, that's enough about me. But anyway, oh, good. Yeah, she has some interesting things coming on. And I told her that, you know, we kind of touched on yesterday about how prostitutes are looked at by the jury and the legal system. And we really are going to pull together a show. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Sprinkled Donuts. Hello, Curl too. So, we are going to do it, but I don't know when we're going to do it, but I'm excited about doing it. And we're going to finish, I'm going to finish reading my book over there that I wish she would write another book. I really do. She is a good writer. Patrick, her name is Patrick. So, what I'm going to do over here is, I was just, listen, I'm over here doing my treadmill today, just working myself out, sweating like a whore on dollar day, I'm gonna say, which is terrible to say, but anyway. So I was, and I thought to myself, you know what? You got another laptop. Why don't you drag that out? And anything you need to read, put it over there. What are you doing to yourself? Your eyes are bad already. So, anyway, so here's what we're going to talk about today, and that is the Nebraska Sand Court's advance sheets on Mr. Aubrey C. Trail. Now, he's the appellant. The thing of these advanced sheets, I think are just, I think they just kind of, is the music too loud? Y'all let me know. I have to play the music behind it because we do get copyright strikes if we don't do something to change it up. So even when you're reading a book or whatever you're doing, you have to do a little something to change it up, which I don't understand it. I mean, it's for educational purposes. It's, you know, we have our copyright thing posted right there, so I don't really understand why they're so, I don't know why they're like that, but anyway, so I'm going to pull this thing up over here, and we're going to read something for just a minute about this, not that one. I found all kinds, once I started looking, I was like, oh Lord, this guy, he is, but you know, his girlfriend's name is Bailey what is his name? Bailey something. But he said she wasn't in the room. Hey, Elizabeth, the music isn't. Okay, let me turn it down. Thank you so much. Because I usually don't know. I have this little thing in my ear, but, I'm not really hearing the same thing y'all are hearing. So let me turn it down. So, okay, let me see if I can get it down just a little bit more. That's all the way. How's that? Is that better? Okay, good. I think that'll work great. Oh, yeah, I don't even hear it now. All right. But he tried to say that she was not even in the room. Well, she absolutely was in the room. How can he say that? She helped him dismember this poor girl. And she was on, I believe, Facebook, and is how they lured these girls to come and take these little jobs. And anyway, let me take a drink and then we'll get going. I'm drinking, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but this is Dublin root beer. It is bottled right here in Dublin, Texas, and it is so delicious. They make vanilla cream soda. I don't know if it's sold out of the state of Texas or not. That I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to play this over here for you. I swear I've got this. We're not going to drop you. I'm not going to drop you. I promise. It's right here. So hang on just a second, guys. Oh, Lord. Right here. I'm going to share this one. Come on, window. It is. Is it this one? It'll pull up. This one right here. Make it big. Okay. Now escape over here and make this one over here. And we're going to hit play, and then we're going to go. Oh, come on, play. I think it's share. Can you hear that? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if you can. I'm going to make it big. Oh, shit. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I know all this other stuff's there, but I'm not going to fight with it. Oh, witches. Let's see. I don't know how to fix that part, but we'll see. Oh, go. Uh-oh. See? I don't know. Let me go back one. Sorry about that. Okay. Where was it? Oh my gosh, I just get so frustrated with my damn self. I was going to link these two together, but I really can't. Hang on just a second. Let me get this to pull back up. All right. Oh boy. Switch to left and right tabs. Here she, okay, let me go back to this one. Where was it? Y'all just bear with me. I'm kind of stupid when it comes to this, and it makes me so damn mad. There it is. Okay, now let me pull myself back up. I know you can see this, right? Okay. Okay. Wow. See, I can hear it, but oh, there we go. Golly. Can you hear that? Oh, look how pretty she was. I wish I could. Okay, I think you can see that. I wish I could make that bigger. I can. Maybe I should just hit this little thing over here. I don't know. I know it's kind of little, but I know you can still see it, I think. Isn't that terrible? Someday I'll get good at this. I don't know when, but someday. I just laughed at myself. Okay, we can stop sharing that. Okay, now let's stop sharing that. Stop. There we go. Come back to ourselves. I think, let me close that down over there. Okay, all right. Anyway, that's kind of like what happened. So, let me get my little brief back up here, and we'll just start reading off on the first page over here about how this actually happened. So he told him that they were witches. Now, okay, now think about this. This is what he's saying, but we don't know if that's actually true or not. Because can you imagine a little girl going over there, for a job as a witch. I don't think that's what happened. That just seems a little bit crazy, but this guy is absolutely diagnosed as a psychopath. He really is. So I'm going to come down here. I know this is just not for everybody. I know it is, but this is going to be this is his appeal, and this was filed November the 10th, 2022. We cannot read all 66 pages, but here's what his answer. Here's what he thinks is wrong. He goes, a denial of emotion to, okay, this is explaining that there was a denial of emotion to sever will not reverse unless clear prejudice and an abuse of discretion are shown. An appellate court will find such an abuse only where the denial caused the defendant substantial prejudice amounting to miscarriage of justice. Because remember, they were trying to they were going to try them both together, right? But then they did not. It was separate, right? The trial witnesses was a problem. It is for the trial court to determine the extent to which a sequestering order will be applied in a given case. So apparently they did not sequester the jury, and he wanted that, and that's why he was found guilty. Oh, good. Thank you, Sprinkled Donut. Thank you so much, because I want to talk to you about doing that other show. And then the number 3 is, an appellate court will not disturb a trial court's decision whether to grant a motion for mistrial unless the court has abused its discretion. He filed his motion for mistrial. At the end of every, I can't hear words, comes to words, get an audio mixer and run the, you're not hearing me? You can't hear me? Oh, is it on? Let me see. You can hear me talking right now, right? I hope so. And my husband has got to hook up a second. He's got to help me get a different, some way to split the screen different where it can be full, he's got to help me with that. I'm not really that tech savvy. He's better at it than I am. But anyway, let me see if I can even hear myself. Can I hear myself? I think I can. Okay. Yeah. Oh, the video. Oh, thank you. Because I was like, oh, this is the word. Yeah, the video. I just suck at that. I really don't know. Oops, sorry, my chair moved. I got to get somebody to fix that. I mean, where's Jen Lou when I need her, right? I'm just joking. I know I can't rely on that forever. But see, I try to just split my screen over here and then just do it that way, but you can't do that either because it doesn't understand share. It just, I don't know. It just doesn't understand it. But anyway, so then he was saying that they didn't sequester the witness, the jurors, and that's why he's found guilty, because they went and looked something up, I'm sure. And then an appellate court will not disturb a trial. Okay, we just read that one. Then it was the criminal law. Motions for new trials and appeal errors. In a criminal case, a motion for new trial is addressed to the discretion of the trial court. And unless an abuse of discretion is shown, the trial court's determination will not be disturbed. All right? This is all the things he's complaining about. And then the constitutional law. The constitutionality of the statute presents a question of law which an appellate court independently reviews. Okay? Aggravating and mitigating circumstances. In review of a sentence of death, the Nebraska Supreme Court conducts a de novo review of the record to determine whether the aggravating or the mitigating circumstances support the imposition of the death penalty. He absolutely deserved the death penalty. Sorry. I think so anyway. I mean, he's very smug about what he's saying and doing. It is just terrible how he acts. Because he's sitting there in the interrogation. I would love to show this interrogation video. It's going to take me 2 parts to do this thing on this particular person. So whenever I get this fixed where I can show this interrogation, he sits there and he looks at the police officers and he says, well, maybe I did it, maybe I didn't. Just so nonchalant because he does not care. He absolutely... just the traits of, well, whatever. No, he does not care about anybody. He attempts to care about his co-conspirator by only saying, well, she just wasn't in the room. Now, if you wanted to say something like that, you would have to get her to not be charged, you would have to say she wasn't even there. But she absolutely was there because the girl met her first, and then he came in the room and offered her the money for the job, explaining that they were witnesses. You know who that sounds like? Oh, Letitia Stout. Good Lord. Remember her explaining she was trying to tell Dr. Lewis that there was something wrong with her, that the Valturi came in her cell, and crazy. But she's not crazy. See, the difference is Letitia Stout read the DSM-5 and other things, and then she thought, oh, I'm just going to use that as my excuse. And she tried it, but it just didn't work. So anyway, I can't stand that woman. I just can't stand her. I mean, I laugh about her because she acts so ridiculous, but there's nothing funny about her. I absolutely cannot stand her. Anyway. The Sixth Amendment secures to criminal defendants the right to be tried to an impartial jury drawn from sources reflecting a fair cross-section of the community. And then it goes, the fair cross-section veneer requirement is not explicit in the text of the Sixth Amendment. Okay. So, and then it goes on to an adequate voir dire where jurors are directly involved in sentencing in capital cases entails the opportunity to inquire whether the views of the death penalty would disqualify prospective jurors from sitting. Now, a lot of people cannot sit on a death penalty case because they feel like they're not able to judge the end of a person. They're not able to judge whether that person's life should end, by us, by humans, like interfering. But other people can. I've always found that very interesting, and I would. That's another thing I would like to study about what makes a person decide that they just cannot give the death penalty. No matter what this person's done, they just can't do it. Right? I'd like to study that too. Everything's in this mind. It's just a lot of. So. The group's defined by solely in terms of shared attitudes that would prevent or substantially impair a member of the group from performing one of their duties as a juror are not distinctive from the groups for fair cross-sections. Then it's talking about, in order to establish a prima facie violation of the fair cross-section, the requirement under the Sixth Amendment, a defendant must show, number one, the group alleged to be excluded is a distinctive group in the community, or number two, that the representation of the group in the veneers from which jurors are selected is not fair and reasonable in relation to the number of such persons in the community, and number three, that it is underrepresentation is due to systematic exclusion of the group in the jury selection process. Now, that's a lot to say, isn't it? Okay, and then it goes, jurors. An impartial jury is nothing more than jurors who will consistently apply the law and find the facts. Beliefs with respect to the death penalty are within the individual's control. Death qualification does not create an appearance of unfairness, as it only results in the removal for cause of those jurors who are unwilling to temporarily set aside their own beliefs and indifference to the rule of law. See, that's the thing, it's their own beliefs, right? Maybe, but still, how can you ask somebody to set aside their own beliefs and just follow the law? Because I just don't think people are capable of doing that. I just don't, I just think there's something just within them that they're not able to. So, the state has legitimate interest in avoiding the burden of presenting the same evidence to the different juries for the guilt phase and the aggravation phase of a trial. And this is number 16, is constitutional law. The state does not violate the Sixth Amendment and right to an impartial jury by death qualifying the jury before a trial wherein it has alleged an aggravator that, if found by the jury, will make the defendant eligible for the death penalty. And then number 17, it says, when a classification created by a state action does not jeopardize the exercise of fundamental right and categorized because of an inherently suspect characteristic, the Equal Protection Clause requires only that the classification rationally further a legitimate state's interest. This goes a lot, doesn't it? You know what? I'm going to skip down to the meat of this because the first, the first few pages, they're describing why, how, and what. Hey, Magic Star, there's our friend. I haven't seen her in a long time. How you doing, girl? Good to see you. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you're enjoying your new place. So good to see you. So this is appeal from the District Court of Saline County. Vicki L. Johnson, judge, affirmed. Benjamin H. Murray of Murray Law, PC, for the appellant, and Douglas J. Peterson, Attorney General, and James D. Smith, Senior Assistant Attorney General, for the appellee. So, and this is it. I'm going to give you the introduction real quick, because I know we can't read the whole thing, I get it, but we can talk about it a little bit today. Introduction. The defendant was convicted by a jury of murder in the first degree, a criminal conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. He was also convicted pursuant to a plea of improper disposal of human skeletal remains. A three-judge panel sentenced the defendant to death. The defendant asserts on appeal that the three-judge panel erred in determining that the sentence of death was not excessive or disproportionate to the penalty imposed in similar cases. Okay. Now, it was okay for him to take a life and dismember, right? But it's not okay. It's just not fair for them to give him the death penalty for that. Are you kidding me? Alternatively, he argues that Nebraska's death penalty scheme, it's a scheme, this is what he's saying, oh boy, is unconstitutional because it allows a panel of judges rather than a jury to make the findings of whether the aggravating circumstances justifies the death penalty and whether sufficient mitigating circumstances exist which approach or exceed the weight given to the aggravating circumstances. Wow. The defendant also, oh boy, he's just a mess, isn't he? I gotta find a little place. I tried to roll it up a little bit, but it just kind of got all of it. So he goes, the defendant also challenges the constitutionality of the death, qualifying the potential jurors, arguing that it creates a conviction-prone jury. Okay, so if it is labeled as a death case, well, there's just no, I mean, like, that's just, he's trying to say that, well, they automatically think you're guilty and they're just going to put you to death. And that's really not true. So, finally, the defendant challenges the denial of his pretrial motion to sever the conspiracy and murder charges, the court's release of the victim's mother from sequestration after she testified, and the denial of his motion for mistrial after a verbal outburst and act of self-harm in front of the jury. Okay, let me tell you what he did. I forgot to tell you this. So he's in front of the jury and he has snuck in something and he slit his own throat while he's sitting there in trial. You know, when they got into the penalty phase. So he slits his own throat in the courtroom in front of everybody. So they saw that. He did it, but they saw that, so he gets a new trial. That's what he's trying to say. Isn't that disgusting? Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so he did that. So after this verbal outburst and an act of self-harm in front of the jury and the denial of the motion for a new trial, after evidence was submitted allegedly demonstrating the self-harm would not have occurred but for the alleged misconduct of jail staff, we affirm. Oh, so here we go. This is beautiful. I love this. I'm so glad I'm reading this part. So it is the jail's fault that he snuck something into the courtroom and was able to slit his own throat. That is the jail's fault. I swear. Well, are the jailers not going to be charged for him attempting to kill himself? Wow, how about that? That is crazy, isn't it? Oh, background. The state submitted information charged Aubrey Trail with one count of murder in the first degree in violation of Nebraska's, I'm not going to read those parts because that would take a long time, and one count of improper disposal of human skeletal remains in violation of Nebraska statutes, and one count of criminal conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in violation of Nebraska statutes. The victim was Sydney L. Luke, who was 24 years old at the time of her death on or about November the 15th, 2007. So it kind of really is an old case, you know. The operative information gave notice that the state intended to adduce evidence that of the aggravating circumstances that, number one, the murder manifested exceptional depravity by ordinary standards of morality and intelligence, and number two, that Trail has a substantial prior history of serious assaults and terrorizing criminal activity, and that the state later removed the notice of a second aggravator. So they only used one aggravator in their decision to go ahead with the death penalty. As part of his trial strategy, Trail pled no contest to the improper disposal of human skeleton remains. His plea was accepted prior to the beginning of the jury trial on the remaining two counts. The theory of the defense was that Trail was involved in consensual, oh, here we go. He's now going to claim, well, he was just in a consensual sexual relationship with this girl, even though he had never met her before. This was the first time he ever met her. And again, he promised her some sort of a job, and he's going to pay her $5,000, right? Wow, that is just terrible. I don't even understand how something. This group always included Bailey Boswell, with whom Trail lived. The group also at various points included Ashley Hills, Anastasia Golia, I can't say her last name, Goliakova, and Caitlin Brandy. It's Caitlin Brandel. The defense argued that because Hill and Goley, I'm just going to call her Goley because she has a really long name. Okay. That Hill and Goley and Brandel, okay, that Hill and Goley had recently left the group. Trail was hoping that Sydney would become a new member. Okay, so the other two were also in the witches group, right? Isn't this just, it is fascinating. I'd never heard of this, so this is all new to me. I just found it and I was like, oh God. According to the defense, Sydney was interested in joining the group and was accidentally killed while the recipient of consensual erotic asphyxiation. Trail then his name is Trail, then panicked and dismembered and disposed of Sydney's remains. I just highly doubt that. I mean, I'm sure she did not consent to being choked, right? The jury selection. Before trial, defense counsel moved to prevent death qualification of the jury. In the motion, defense counsel objected to any mention in the jury's questionnaire, during jury selection, or during the trial of guilt or innocence, of the possible sentences that Trail might receive. Defense counsel asserted that informing the jury of possible penalty of death is unnecessary and results in excluding those jurors who cannot perform their duties because of their own beliefs on the death penalty. According to the defense counsel, the process results in those charged with capital offenses being unjustifiably subjected to conviction-prone juries. We talked about that a while ago, which violates equal protections under the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and Article 1, Number 3 of the Nebraska Constitution. The right under the 6th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution to a fair and impartial cross-section of jurors, and by the right of the heightened reliability in capital cases as protected by the 8th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and Article I. In case I, 9, and 15 of the Nebraska Constitution. As irrelevant to this appeal, defense counsel asserted that empirical research has demonstrated that the systematic exclusion of jurors who have a moral objection to the death penalty results in capital juries that tend to be ... more conviction prone, and that these views are not representative of a fair cross-section of the community. Further asking jurors about their views on the death penalty magnifies the effect of conviction-prone beliefs. While defense counsel acknowledged that the U.S. Supreme Court in Lockhart versus McCree rejected a claim that the process of death qualification violates the fair cross-section requirements of the 6th Amendment and the right to an impartial jury, defense counsel cited that the written motion of various articles describing additional studies in the 30-plus years since McCree, which is a really old death case, right, indicating that the process of the death qualification, indicating that the process of the death qualification creates conviction-prone juries, no testimony or other evidence was adduced in support of that motion. Defense counsel stated that the justification for death qualification presupposes a statutory scheme in which a single jury determines both the guilt and the penalty. Defendant counsel argued that because in Nebraska, the jury does not determine the sentence in the penalty phase, informing the jury of the possible sentence of death serves no legitimate purpose. And think about what he's saying there. Well, since a 3-panel judge makes that decision, there's no reason for the jury to know that it is even a death penalty case. But you got to think in your own mind. Supposedly, when they're picking a jury, supposedly you're not supposed to know anything about this case, right? You're just not supposed to. But if you live in that state, it's hard for me to think that some of these jurors have never heard of that case before. Just like Lori Bellow's case. It was hard for me to believe that some of those jurors never heard of that case. Or Chad Daybell's. I mean, that just seems a little preposterous, doesn't it? Okay. Then he goes. Down here. The court overruled the motion and proceeded with voir dire. During the voir dire, defense counsel renewed the objection to the death qualification of each individual juror during the juror selection. The renewed objection was again overruled. Jurors' questionnaires and the judge's statements from the bench during the voir dire informed the potential jurors that the charges Trail faced could result in the death penalty. The judge explained that the sentence itself would be determined by a panel of judges, but that if Trail were found guilty of first-degree murder, the jurors would be asked to listen to some more evidence and determine if the state had proved additional elements, after which their duty would be done and the matter would go to the panel of judges for sentencing. Okay, I think it's perfectly fair. I do. Now, but that's just me. I mean, other people might not think it's perfectly fair. I mean, everybody's free to have their own thought about it, but I mean, even though they don't do this, they don't give him his sentence. They do need to hear the aggravating factors as to why it's bumped up, as to why it's been bumped up to a death penalty case, even though I think they should know. I absolutely do. I absolutely do. During the jury selection process, jurors numbers 104 and 126 stated in chambers that their views against the death penalty would impair their ability to be fair and impartial. Both jurors were struck for cause on the state's motion. Defense counsel did not object to them being excused. Jurors number 23, 60, 78, 245, 261, and 275 were struck for cause on defense counsel's motion because they indicated their belief in Trail's guilt would interfere with their ability to be fair and impartial. Jurors number 108, 113, and 262 indicated that they did not believe in the death penalty, but could perform the fact-finding duties in a fair and impartial manner. Jurors number 113 and 262 were subject to preemptory challenges, but juror number 108 was not. The motion to sever, because then he decides, well, it wasn't fair because I got tried for both acts at the same time, by God. I wanted to have the murder case separate from the disposal case, I guess. I mean, how silly, right? The defense counsel moved pursuant to Nebraska statutes to sever the trial on the murder charge from the other charges. As a relevant to this appeal, defense counsel asserted a jointer would prejudice Trails because of evidence admissible in support of conspiracy charge would not be admissible in support of the murder charge. If those two charges were tried separately, defense counsel explained, there would be no evidence proving the conspiracy, that would be truly independent of the murder charge. Defense counsel believed because of this, there could be no prima facie case that through the independent evidence establishing the existence of the underlying conspiracy, which is necessary to admit testimony under the co-conspirator exception to the hearsay rule. A lot of damn words, right? Just a lot of words out, it seems like. Oh boy. The state responded it intended to establish without impermissible hearsay a prima facie case of conspiracy before attempting to introduce evidence under the co-conspirator exception to the hearsay rule. The evidence to establish the testimony of, the evidence to establish the exception to the hearsay rule and the conspiracy explained by the state would primarily consist of the testimony of Hill and Goley and Randall. Remember, they had left the group and he was trying to recruit new witches. That's what this was really all about, right? Oh my God. Oh my. All whom Trail had tried to convince to participate in a murder. The state asserted that their testimony would be admissible as evidence of premeditation on the murder charge and would be introduced into evidence even if the trial of the conspiracy count were not joined with the murder count. The court overruled this motion to sever. However, it warned the state that it needs to structure its case to avoid a bootstrapping problem and that I will be keeping an eye on this case as it proceeds. That's what the judge told them. Okay, so now they're going to talk about sequestration and release of Sydney's mother. Now, I just feel so bad for Sydney's mother. I really do. I mean, imagine having to hear all of this and having to hear this psychopath, because he is a diagnosed psychopath, tell that her daughter just willingly participated in here and she just wanted to die from sexual sex and asphyxiation. That's just was her dream. She wanted $5,000. She wanted to do that. It's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. I worked in the DA's office in a county here in Texas, and I saw a lot of horrible things, really, things that just disgust you. And I will tell you something, this is real now. Okay, I need you to ignore that Streamlab bull crap. I don't know why it's coming on here. I want it to go away, but I don't know how to get it off of here. So, yeah, just ignore that, okay? It just puts this little bot throws the stuff in there. It's just so rude, and I don't like it. I got to get it off of here. Anyway, that you could come into that office, and the room where they kept all the evidence, was like this big vault. No, I don't want to add. Look, I don't want to add just. Do you see that crap? Oh, it's irritating. Anyway, it was kind of behind the first part of the office. So when you're standing at this big counter over there before they buzz to let you in, you could see the door to this evidence room, but you could smell things coming out of this evidence room. There was just this odor of disgust that came out of that evidence room. Because you're talking about one of the things that was in this evidence room was there was a little girl named Candy, and she was, murdered by this guy, and they found her on a tree. Okay, this is kind of a log, right? One of the things that was in this evidence room was that log, right? So, I mean, it was just a lot of things, and they, like, what the things that could be wrapped up in plastic or whatever, it doesn't really hide all of the smells coming from this stuff. Anyway, just a little side note about some history there. So, before trial commenced, the court granted defense counsel's motion to sequester witnesses. Sydney's mother was the first witness to testify at trial, and after being cross-examined by the defense counsel, the state asked Sydney's mother to be released from her subpoena. The state said it would waive sequestration and would be willing to allow the defense to call Sydney's mother out of turn if it wished, so that Sydney's mother could be present to watch the remainder of the trial. Of course he didn't want that. Of course not, right? Defense counsel objected, following a discussion in chambers that was not on record, that the court pronounced that it was releasing Sydney's mother from sequestration, but would allow the defense to reopen and cross-examine if wished to do so. Sydney's mother was not recalled to testify by either party after being released from sequestration. Evidence, woo boy. At trial, evidence was adduced that Trail and Boswell moved into the basement apartment in Wilbur, Nebraska in June of 2017. They had been in a romantic relationship since the summer of 2016. To make money, they sold stolen goods, including sales at a local antiques market. Of course they did. Sydney's contact. This is how it happened. In November of 2017, Boswell posed as Audrey on an online dating site. Boswell began messaging with Sydney on November the 11th and learned that her family lived just hours away from where Sydney lived in Lincoln. She also learned that Sydney worked as a store clerk at a Lincoln hardware store and that Sydney and Boswell arranged a first date on November the 14th. Text messages between them are consistent with arranging a first date. Neither Trail nor any other third party is mentioned in these text messages. Sydney initially delayed giving Boswell her address, but upon further request on the evening of November the 13th, she provided it. Within 1 minute of obtaining the address, Boswell conducted an internet search for this location. Within 5 minutes of obtaining this information, Boswell made a reservation at a hotel nearby. Trail and Boswell checked into the hotel before the first date. After a couple of hours on their first date, Boswell returned Sydney home. Sydney did not go to the hotel. Boswell joined Trail at the hotel, where they again spent the night. Sydney had accepted a second date with Boswell to occur on November the 15th, and on the morning of November the 15th, Trail and Boswell left the hotel and went to the hardware store, where they purchased drop cloths and hacksaw blades and tin snips. This was completely premeditated. This was no accident. You do not go to the hardware store and buy these items just because you need them laying around, when you just need those in your apartment, at any time you could be needing these. This kind of reminds me of, and this is true too, you go look it up, Alexi Treviso. She carried black trash bags in her purse, prepared for at any moment that child was born to go ahead and take care of it. That was no accident. She never intended to keep this child. She never wanted this child. She did not feel connected to this child. I think that Alexi Treviso, she was really afraid of her mother, but also I think she really did suffer from some kind of psychosis or psychotic denial of pregnancy, because she called it an it, or she never really described it as a baby. It was like some foreign object that just fell out of her body, right? This is what this reminds me of. It's just intentional preparation for taking care of this, because this is what they wanted to do. Cell phone location information indicated that around the time Sydney would have left for work, Trail and Boswell drove to the vicinity of Sydney's apartment. Trail and Boswell then took the same route Sydney took to work. Shortly after Sydney started her shift, Trail entered Sydney's workplace alone. Video footage showed that Sydney walked toward her station at the guard shack. She crossed paths with Trail, who was walking into the store. Trail did not interact with Sydney, and she did not appear to recognize Trail. As Sydney walked away, Trail turned around twice to watch her. Trail then called Boswell. Trail proceeded into the hardware store where he purchased a chemical drain cleaner and a long cord. Okay, so now he's getting the drain cleaner and he's getting the cord. I mean, he's going to be completely prepared, and he is stalking the person that he's going to murder. I'm not monetized. I can say those words. It's okay. Jesus. Cell phone location information showed that Trail and Boswell went back to their Wilbur apartment while Sydney was at work. While in Wilbur, Boswell made the 2 trips to the local store. On the first trip, she purchased bleach and a large trash bag. Later, she purchased duct tape and roasting pans. Oh my God. Are they cooking them? Oh my God. Throughout the day, Boswell texted Sydney to ask how her day was going and communicate that she was looking forward to their day. Sydney left work at the end of her shift on November the 15th. Boswell left the Wilbur apartment around 6 p.m. and picked Sydney up at her apartment around 6:54. Trail was at the Wilbur apartment, and Boswell called Trail at 7:11 p.m. The cell phone location information indicated that Sydney arrived at Trail and Boswell's apartment at approximately 8 p.m. on November the 15th, and that both Trail and Boswell were present at the apartment at that time. The cell tower lost all signal from Sydney's phone at about 8:40 p.m. A resident of the apartment building where Trail and Boswell lived smelled bleach late in the night. The smell of the bleach was so strong that the following day, another resident of the building became ill from it. Right, I bet so. Sydney did not report to work the next day. She was never seen alive again. Disposal. This is horrible. Trigger warning, trigger warning. There's some things in here that's disgusting, but this is the true facts of the case. Okay. Cell phone locations information indicated that Trail and Boswell left their apartment the afternoon of November the 16th and traveled to an area in Clay County. On December the 4th and 5th, after tracing Trail's and Boswell's cell phone location information, most portions of Sydney's body were found in a ditch in the area Trail and Boswell had traveled to on November 16th. The remainder of Sydney's body, including most of her internal organs, was never found. Law enforcement also found duct tape, tarps, and a sauna suit with the crotch missing, gloves, and various items of clothing in the vicinity. Sydney's body had been segmented into 14 parts and placed into garbage bags. An autopsy revealed the manner of death to be homicidal violence that included an element of strangulation. The hyoid, remember our little friend over there? Oh my gosh, little Maddie, her hyoid, that was also broken. So the hyoid bone in the neck had been crushed. There was scleral hemorrhage in one of her eyes, and there was petechiae, it's just little hemorrhages throughout the face, including the eyelids and under the eyelids. Scleral hemorrhages and petechiae are due to an occlusion of blood flow and consistent with either manual or ligature strangulation. When asked whether these signs are very common in strangulation cases, the expert responded yes. Manual strangulation, yes. Expert testimony introduced by the state reflected that strangulation due to erotic asphyxiation is rare, and that the fracture of the hyoid bone, which results in deep in the neck tissue, it's pretty far. You got to be chucking pretty damn hard to break that, right? Hers is crushed. I don't think we'll ever really see the autopsy report for little Maddie, and I don't think we should, because I think she deserves to have her dignity reserved as much as we can, right? But I bet she was struck extremely hard as well. And I just wondered if this was the same situation that happened to her, right? I just have this feeling that poor little girl She had, talked about turning 13. I believe that she did want to move to her dad's house. I believe that he was in a rage. I believe that he did this one final act in a rage. That's what I think. Expert testimony introduced by the state reflected that strangulation due to erotic asphyxiation is rare, and that fracture of that bone, which resides deep in the neck tissue, is very uncommon during erotic asphyxiation. Sydney's body also showed indications that around that time of death, she experienced blunt force trauma. This included bruises on the back of the head and down the middle of her back, and a deep bruise into the muscle of her inner thigh. Around that time of death, Sydney also suffered torn earlobes, and piercings, around her piercing sites. Abraded contusions around Sydney's wrist revealed evidence of restraint. The autopsy was complicated by the absence of most of the organs of Sydney's torso and abdomen. You know what? Remember they bought that roasting pan? How much you want to bet they put those in that roasting pan? And I know that's gross. I know it is. Okay. Oh, boy. Kind of sickening, right? So Sydney's torso and abdomen, as well as the absence of other body parts such as the upper part of her trachea, the windpipe, the larynx, and the veins and arteries of the neck. These appear to have been removed post-mortem by use of a sharp blade. The pathologist did not believe that the mutilation of Sydney's body was due to animal predation. I don't believe so either. They did this to her. In an interview with law enforcement after he was apprehended, Trail spoke of draining Sydney's blood from her body and being just very thirsty that day. Remember, he's claiming to be part of a witches group, right? Hey, listen, we need to let Letitia Stout know that she should have hooked up with him. She wanted, that's what should have happened here. She wanted to live the life of a witch. Here you go. Oh, that's so terrible. Numerous superficial postmortem shallow cuts were found on Sydney's body. These included cuts underlining and framing the tattoo on Sydney's arm reading, "Everything will be wonderful someday." Oh, that's sad. Healing Goley and Brandy's relationship with Trail and Boswell. Before they were called individually to testify, the defense counsel objected at trial to the introduction of the deposition testimonies of Hills and Goley and Brandel, on the grounds that the state had failed to establish a prima facie case of the conspiracy through independent evidence. The state responded that evidence had already been adduced at overt acts of the conspiracy, such as online dating, the recruitment, the purchases at the hardware store the day before, and the murder, staying at the hotel, driving by Sydney's apartment, and observing her at work, and the cell phone evidence linking Trail and Boswell to Sydney's murder. The state explained that Sydney's murder was part of an overacting conspiracy. I'm sorry, not overacting, overarching. Okay. The court ruled that state, okay, overarching. Okay, then. The court ruled that the state had not yet established a prima facie case for conspiracy through independent evidence. After that ruling, the state introduced without objection physical evidence that Goley and Brandel had been inside Wilbur's apartment, the Wilbur apartment. The state also introduced the testimony of law enforcement that its investigations had linked Goley to several stays with Trail and Boswell, all at hotels in Falls City, Nebraska, between July and October. The state then adduced that Hill's testimony. This is kind of interesting stuff, isn't it? I think I'm going to get some of these briefs from other trials. I'm going to start reading those. You want to really know what happened, it's all in the brief, right? Without objection, Hills testified that she met Boswell through an online dating app in July, and that she met Trail through Boswell, and that Boswell used an alias. Trail had told Hills that he could help her get revenge on an abusive stepfather. He invited Hills to become one of 12 other women that he claimed were associated with him, whom he referred to intermittently as his girls and witches. Boy. Trail showed Hills nude photographs of the alleged witches, but she never met any of them. Boswell was the queen witch, and Trail claimed to be the vampire. Oh gosh, here we go, y'all. This is the cult. This is the cult. Except it's not religious like Chad and Lori. It is, it's the witches. It's that kind of a cult. Okay, now I understand. In August 2017, Hill was introduced to Goley as a person who Trail said might become one of us as a watcher. Trail told Hills that she could leave his coven at any point until she took her first soul, which she understood meant to kill someone and take their last breath. Hills believed that Trail, she continued to associate with Trail and Boswell. She was sexually involved with both. Their sexual activities involved erotic asphyxiation. Hills had to follow various rules that Trail set for her behavior, such as having to check in every 3 hours while away from the Wilbur apartment, remaining unclothed while in the apartment, and having to ask permission to do anything, even to use the restroom or get a drink of water. If she did not follow these rules or otherwise behave, she was physically punished by being hit, whipped, or choked. Trail paid her an allowance. Hill also assisted in selling antiques. This is really bad, isn't it? Hills described a process she observed a few times where Boswell would start talking to women that she met through a dating app and then hand off the communication with that woman to Trail. If the woman wanted to talk on the phone, Trail would give the phone back to Boswell after giving her a summary of prior text communications. Hill stated that in August of 2017, while at a grocery store, Boswell briefly met with a woman that she had been in communication with in the same manner. Boswell directed the woman to go speak with Trail. Trail and the woman spoke for a while before Trail, Boswell, and Hills left the store. Hills testified that Trail asked her afterwards if she wanted that woman to be her first kill, premeditating a person he met at the grocery store. Jeez. While Hills responded in an affirmative, she was told a couple of weeks later that the woman had traveled to California to visit family. They were stalking these people. Lord, they were stalking them. Trail told Hills they would either save her for another time or find someone else. Trail, Boswell, Hills, and Goley went on a vacation together that August. Shortly thereafter, Trail stated that he wanted to kill Goley. Trail explained Goley was too nice and didn't have the evil in her. A plan was discussed to do so, but never executed. Trail threatened Hills that he would kill her family if she ever disclosed his plans. Yeah, it is a witches cult. It's a cult of witches right here. Hill stated that the Trail often spoke of torturing and killing someone and said that causing pain to someone would make the killer more powerful. Trail was aroused by this idea and watching her and Boswell torture someone. He told Hills he wanted the idea of torturing someone to be arousing for her and Boswell too. Trail asked Hills to think about ways that she would torture her victims. In September 2017, Hills told Boswell she wanted out. Among other reasons, she did not want to kill Goley. Hills moved to another town and had only sporadic contact with Trail and Boswell thereafter. Okay, now think about this, guys. Now this comes back to Melanie. Think about Melanie Gibb and Zulema and those people. They knew that Chad Murray was dangerous, but they said nothing to anyone. They listened to all of it. They know more than they've ever mentioned, but they never said a word to anybody. To me, they should have been charged as co-conspirators in my mind. But you know, who am I? Right? So so I read that part. During a break in Hill's testimony, the court found in Chambers that the state had provided sufficient evidence to prove the prima facie case of conspiracy and that it might now get into the statement of Boswell. Defense counsel asked if when we start getting into the hearsay, it could have a continuing objection after making the first objection. The court granted the continuing hearsay objection, which the defense counsel explained would be for any statements attributable to Boswell. So he didn't want Boswell's information to come in because she knows everything. But you know, she was also given the death penalty. So Hills resumed her testimony. She stated that Trail once showed her Boswell's killing bag. He had pulled out a hammer, some pliers, and a sauna suit from the bag and showed them to her. Trail told Hills she would get her own killing bag when it was time. Trail said that the sauna suit was so that they would not get blood on themselves. Okay. And here's Goley. Goley testified after trial in the late summer of 2017 that she met Boswell through the dating app. Boswell initially used an alias. She was later introduced to Trail by Boswell, who explained they were in an open relationship. She eventually entered into a relationship with Trail and Boswell that was somewhat similar to Hills, but Boswell's was in charge of punishing her. Also, erotic asphyxiation was apparently not involved. Goley soon told them that she was not comfortable with some of the rules, after which she no longer had to follow them. Goldie did household chores and assisted in the antiques enterprise. Goldie testified that she liked the idea of someone taking care of her. Trail spoke to the goalie about having a coven and special powers, but she did not believe him. Goalie testified that Trail and Boswell eventually started talking to her about whether she would be willing to torture and kill someone. They told her they wanted to make videos of people being tortured, which they could sell. Trail and Boswell told Goalie that they could make $1 million and split it and go their separate ways. They sometimes also discussed murdering someone in a certain manner, like for sacrifice or something. Trail and Boswell assured Goalie that their victims would be someone who had done bad things. In other words, it's okay to take somebody's life if they're already just a criminal and a bad person, right? Their life doesn't matter. Okay. So Goalie says she was not comfortable hurting anyone, and she left the group in October. Brandel, this is the third person. Brandel testified at trial that she met Boswell through a dating app. It's the same thing. They just keep repeating the same behavior, all right? In October 2017, Boswell used an alias, and Brandel entered into a relationship with Boswell similar to the others, except she was more focused on having a romantic relationship with Boswell and did not want anything from Trail. She understood that she was entering into a dominant, submissive relationship and that Trail was part of the package deal, but testified that there was no mention of choking. She had not been in a dominant, submissive relationship before, but she wanted to be with Boswell and decided to give it a shot. I mean, you might as well. What the hell, right? I mean, you got to try it sometime, I guess. That's what she's... Oh, God. You have to make light of it, because if you don't, you just cry, because it's so horrific. It really is. So she did not get directly involved in their antiques enterprise. Brandel said that there was some discussion of witches. Trail told her that she was Boswell's familiar, and that they had known each other in past. Oh, here we go, guys. Here it is. That they had known each other in past lives. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Now we know where Chad and Lori got this stuff from. Okay, here it is. Here it is. They must have known about this case too. Oh my gosh. This is terrible. Okay. Trail also mentioned having a coven of witches that she would meet someday. Trail told Brandel she could ask for one wish. She could just have one wish. But she would have to pay the price. Brandel explained that she was skeptical and just did not pursue that line of discussion. She was never told what the price would be. On November the 13th, 2017, Boswell complained about another woman she claimed was stalking her and asked Brandel if she would ever kill for her. During intercourse while Trail watched, Boswell asked Brandel if there was anyone she wanted to kill. Boswell also asked Brandel to describe ways someone could torture someone else. When the intercourse became uncomfortable and Brandel wanted to stop, Trail told her that it would stop if Brandel told Boswell what she wanted to hear. Brandel testified that she tried to describe torture techniques from the Renaissance era, and then she recalled learning about it in school. Brandel suffered an asthma. Brandel suffered an asthma attack and went back to her home in Omaha, Nebraska, on the morning of November the 15th, 2017. While Boswell was in the hardware store, Boswell texted Brandel that she would be busy for the next couple of days. Brandel testified that she did not see Trail or Boswell again until the afternoon of the 17th. Brandel described that on the November the 17th, Boswell seemed quieter, more tense than usual. Trail and Boswell picked up Brandel, and they went to a hotel and a casino. Boswell showed Brandel a picture of a young woman whom she identified as her stalker and asked Brandel to participate in the murder. Brandel initially declined, but she accepted the proposition after Trail made various threatening statements. Okay, so where was she when this happened? Because only the two of them were charged, right? After participating in the arrangements to leave Boswell's car in the store parking lot and taking a cab back to the hotel with the idea that they would be using Brandel's car for the supposed murder that they were planning, Trail told Brandel she did not have to worry about participating anymore because she had already proved her loyalty. Trail and Boswell then convinced Brandel to drive them across Nebraska for a supposed drug deal. Brandel testified that Trail and Boswell continued to seem tense and appeared to have they were having like little arguments, right? Randall testified that eventually either Trail or Boswell suggested they were going to find someone to torture and kill as a way to make money. Oh, wow. On November the 21st, during an intercourse at the hotel room, Boswell again asked Randall to talk about how people could be tortured. Randall talked about the same historical torture methods she had the previous time. Boswell talked about the dismembering of people. On November the 22nd, Trail and Boswell had Randall drive them to Kearney, Nebraska. Trail and Boswell explained that they intended to find victims and an exchange student that was still around during their Thanksgiving holiday. Oh, so if somebody didn't go home because they were an exchange student, that was the perfect victim. That's what they were going to do. Okay, got it. And then she goes, who would still be around during the Thanksgiving holidays. Their thinking, Brandel explained, was that such a victim would be unlikely to be immediately missed. The idea was that Boswell and Brandel would torture and murder the victim while Trail watched. Brandel stated that she tried to stay calm and cooperate because she believed that her family would be hurt if she did not. And I can imagine that. I sure can. When a law enforcement officer left a voicemail on Brandel's phone and Trail was informed of that fact, they all left Kearney without any further action toward attempting to identify a potential murder victim. At that point, Trail and Boswell told Brandel that a young woman was missing and that Boswell was being falsely blamed because she was the last person who was seen with this woman. Boswell cried and insisted she did not hurt that missing woman. Trail and Boswell eventually dropped Brandel off at the hotel close to her home after Brandel learned from the law enforcement that her mother had filed a missing persons report on her. Brandel's mother also informed her that her father was gravely ill. Brandel told Trail and Boswell she wanted to return home. Okay, now he's going to start talking. This is the best part of it right here. As he describes his coven and his witches and all this other stuff. Isn't it fascinating? I mean, it's very fascinating to think that, and it's almost like the same. Oh my gosh. I need to ask my friends if they've seen any of this because we need to talk about how this is just like Lord of Allen, right? Anyway, so let's talk about his testimony. This is Trail's testimony. This is what he says went down, which we know is going to be a lie. He's not going to tell the truth. Why would he? Trail testified in his own defense that he stated at the outset that he did not contest 85% of the prosecution's case. Well, he's not going to deny it. Okay. Trail said that Trail and Boswell's apartment, he and the woman he was involved with could talk about anything, from the mildest to the wildest. And what you were, and what you were is what you were. He and Boswell were not going to tell anyone that they were wrong about anything. He acknowledged that there was a lot of talk in her house about killing people, torturing people. Trail claimed that these were just fantasies. No, they weren't. We know they weren't, right? Trail admitted that much of it, albeit not all, of his inspiration and his discussions of these fantasies came from a book of fiction about witchcraft, where there were characters torturing people for power. He did not believe that this was true, but thought of women were interested in this discussion. Other discussions about the reincarnation and the spiritual witch and vampires reflected his personal beliefs. I want to ask him, well, how many times has the Victoria brought you blood in your cell so that you could drink, right? This is another claim of Letitia Stout. Oh my God. Trail claimed that he had met Sydney in the spring of 2017 while she was working at the hardware store, and that Boswell had met her about a week later. Trail described that Sydney and Boswell developed a romantic relationship and that Sydney was paid for participation in Trail's illegal money-making schemes. Victim blaming, right here, victim blaming. Sydney ended her arrangements with Trail in September. Trail testified that in November, Boswell asked Trail if she could reach out to Sydney through the dating app that she was on. Sydney was upset when Boswell picked her up for the first date, and Sydney realized who her date was. But Boswell convinced Sydney to consider coming back and being with us. Okay, so she had been with them before. Now, this is new to me because I had not heard this part, right? So she had been with them before and didn't like it and left. Okay, but then I got to wonder, is that true? I wonder if there's any proof to that. I want to know that, right? Wow. So she asked her to please consider coming back and being with us. And they arranged a second date. Trail described the items purchased on November 15th as intended for the repair and cleaning of antiques. No, you don't use tin snips. You don't. Oh my God. According to Trail, Sydney went to the Wilbur apartment on the evening of November 15th to discuss the possibility of rejoining the group. During that conversation, Trail asked Sydney to either answer or turn off her phone. Sydney turned off the phone. Trail testified that Sydney eventually agreed to experiment that night with erotic asphyxiation, wherein Trail would hold a cord connected to a ligature while Sydney and Boswell engaged in sexual intercourse. And during these activities, Sydney appeared to have a seizure and stopped breathing and died. Trail said he did not intend to kill Sydney. He explained that doing so would be counterproductive because he used people for sex and to make money. So see, he's victim blaming. Why would he kill her? That's his money maker. What's wrong with you? Trail testified that he did not call an ambulance because he had extensive criminal history and had illegal drugs and stolen goods in the apartment. He dismembered Sydney's body as a means of fitting it into the trunk to remove it from their apartment without being noticed. He denied removing Sydney's internal organs. He dumped the trash bags containing Sydney's body in the location where they were eventually discovered by law enforcement. Trail described fleeing with Randall's assistance, claiming that they were looking for an exchange student as a potential victim was simply just part of their fantasy. They never intended to act upon it. Likewise, he claimed that prior to discussions with Hills about killing the woman he met at the store was just fantasy. In fact, Trail claimed he told Hills the woman had moved to California because because the crazy bitch wanted to kill him. He said he was afraid she was actually going to do it and wanted to prevent this from happening. Wow. Then there's this courtroom. This is when he stabbed, this courtroom disruption. This is when he stabs his own self, and you know it's the jail's fault. The trial lasted approximately 3 weeks. On the third day of trial, around 10:30 a.m., after witness was sworn in, but before she testified, Trail seated at the counsel table yelled, "Boswell is innocent, and I curse you all." Immediately thereafter, Trail made a couple of slashing gestures at his neck. Some blood was visible, and Trail he had just secreted a razor blade into the courtroom and had used it to inflict wounds on his neck. The jury was immediately cleared from the courtroom, and law enforcement and medical personnel took over. The judge told counsel that trial would be reconvened after the jury was instructed to disregard the outburst. Okay, just disregard it, not a big deal. Defense counsel moved for mistrial, arguing that the jury would be prejudiced against Trail in determining the aggravator of having a history of serious assaultive or terrorizing criminal activities. The court stated it would determine whether a mistrial was warranted after individual interviewing with the members of the jury. So he went to the jury and he asked each one of them, "Hey, are you going to be able to just, let that go?" All right. The court instructed the jury to disregard the outburst that you heard this morning and not consider it in your deliberations at the end of the trial. Thereafter, each juror was individually questioned by the trial judge in chambers with counsel present. The court generally asked each juror if the juror had heard the curative instructions and believed he or she could remain fair and impartial and follow the instructions. Several jurors were asked if this event of the day affected their ability to remain fair and impartial. Each juror assured the court that he or she could remain fair and impartial. The court directed each juror to bring it to the court's attention if a juror later came to the conclusion that the juror could no longer be fair and impartial. None ever did. The court overruled the motion for mistrial. Motion for a new trial. Okay, let me see what time it is. I only like to go about an hour and a half or so. I know people have things to do, and I don't want to keep people a long time, but so I'm going to read just a couple more pages, and then we'll come back to this. We'll have a part 2 because it's very interesting. Okay, how's that sound? Sound okay? All right. The jury found Trail guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. After the verdict, defense counsel moved for a new trial on the grounds that Trail was prevented from having a fair trial due to the court's rulings on several issues. However, Trail has only appealed denial of his motion as related to defense counsel's motion for mistrial following Trail's verbal outburst and act of self-harm. With respect to Trail's disruption in front of the jury, defense counsel argued that, but for the lack of security measures, the incident could have been prevented. Of course, it's the jail's fault. It's the jail's fault. They didn't count all the razor blades like they're supposed to, so it is their fault. That is true. In jail, they pass out the razors for you guys to shave. And then they count them to make sure everybody brought their blade back. They inspect the little, shavers, and they make sure everybody brought the blade back. But apparently somebody forgot to do that for him. With respect to Trail's disruption in front of the jury, defense counsel argued that for the lack of security measures, the incident could have been prevented, and this negligence, argued defense counsel, contributed to the severity of the event and elevated it to the level that required a mistrial. Defense counsel also argued that the act of violence prejudiced the jury against Trail inasmuch as it was contrary to the argument that Trail was incapable of violence. He is incapable of violence. Did you hear that? He's just not even capable of hurting somebody. What's wrong with you? I mean, he is the vampire, for God's sake. While the court's ruling was pending, the state moved to adduce additional evidence that it argued would show Trail's actions were calculated to disrupt the trial. The state asked that the evidence be under seal as it involved law enforcement intelligence, courtroom security, and officer safety. Defense counsel responded that he did not object and was tentatively planning on offering the same or similar evidence as newly discovered evidence in support of the motion for a new trial at a later date, and several exhibits were marked, offered, and received under seal. The court ultimately denied the motion for a new trial, observing that Trail had not produced any evidence that the act of self-harm prejudiced him. The court found that the self-harm was a calculating gesture resulting in a superficial cut. It actually was calculated. So this is exactly, psychopaths, this is exactly their behaviors. All eyes on him, all eyes on him. He is the most important, we know that. Sufficiency and relative weight. After the verdict, defense counsel waived Trail's right to a jury for the aggravation sentencing phase. Defense counsel then moved to declare Nebraska's death penalty statute unconstitutional, in violation of the 6th and 8th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and Articles 1 through 6 of the Nebraska Constitution. Defense counsel asserted that the sentence panel's factual findings regarding the relative weight of the aggravating and mitigating circumstances are facts increasing the penalty for the crime beyond the prescribed statutory maximum and must therefore be submitted to a jury. Defense counsel also argued that Nebraska is an outlier by permitting the determination of the death penalty to be made by a judicial panel rather than a jury, and that the noticeable trend away from judicial death sentencing is strong evidence that society does not regard such a procedure to be proper or humane. Finally, according to the defense counsel, a determination by a jury of the relative weight of the aggravators and mitigators is necessary to satisfy the 8th Amendment, because the consensus of 12 jurors is less arbitrary and better expresses the consciousness of the community on the ultimate question of life or death. The trial court treated the motion as a motion to quash, and ultimately found that it lacked merit and denied it. Sentencing. Now we're going to talk about sentencing for a minute. Pursuant to Nebraska's rules, I'm not going to name them out because they're long. Sentencing hearing before a 3-judge panel was held. The panel found the state proved beyond a reasonable doubt that the aggravating factor and that the murder manifested exceptional depravity by ordinary standards of morality and intelligence. Well, of course it did. This was supported by the fact that Cindy's murder reflected cold, calculated planning beyond the mere premeditation necessary to support a conviction of first degree. The panel also found to be present 4 out of the 5 factors for finding an exceptional depravity. Number 1, apparent relishing of murder, like he just wanted to murder. It was just his goal. He wanted to do this, right? Number 2, infliction of gratuitous violence on the victim. Number 3, needless mutilation of the victim. And number 4, senseless of the crime. And number 5, helplessness of the victim. The panel explained that the mutilation of Sydney's body made it impossible to determine if Trail had inflicted upon Sydney gratuitous violence beyond the necessary to inflict the death. But all of the other 4 factors were present. First, Trail's actions before and after the murder demonstrated he relished in that act, having no regard for Sydney's life beyond his own pleasure. Second, the needless mutilation of Sydney's body demonstrated that Trail had mental state senselessly bereft of any regard for human life. Third, noted that Sidney posed no threat to Trail, and Boswell had no idea she was being led to an encounter with a man twice her size and was unable to defend herself or seek help. That's sad. At the time of the murder, the panel found that Sidney was the helpless victim. For similar reasons, the panel found that her murder was completely unnecessary. Every murder is completely unnecessary. Jeez, come on, people. Oh my God. And senseless. Further, the panel found that Trail had the capacity to appreciate the wrongfulness of his conduct, and to conform his conduct to the requirements of the law. He did not want to. He did not care. The panel found no statutory mitigating factor or circumstances existed. The only statutory mitigating factor alleged by Trail was that the victim was a participant in the defendant's conduct and consented to the act. She is just a part of it. Now she loved it. Just ask her. Well, we can't. You killed her. As set forth in Nebraska, and then there's the statute, the panel found that this mitigating circumstance did not exist. As a non-statutory mitigating circumstance, the panel recognized Trail's bad childhood and disadvantaged upbringing. His parents left him when he was 2 years old, after which he lived for several years with his grandparents, who had a poor attitude toward the law. When his mother later remarried, Trail was adopted by his stepfather, who was abusive. Trail spent his teenage years in troubled environments, including a juvenile detention facility. He was incarcerated for the first time at age 17 and has spent most of his life incarcerated or on parole. In weighing the aggravating circumstances against the existing non-statutory mitigating factors, the panel found that given the degree of cold, calculated planning, relishing of the murder, and mutilation of the victim, all demonstrating an extreme depravity in the mind of Trail, the aggravating circumstances was entitled to great weight. The panel found that Trail's bad childhood and disadvantaged upbringing does not approach or exceed the weight of the overwhelming evidence supporting the aggravating circumstances of the exceptional depravity found in this case. Finally, the panel found its review under, and then, the statutory, whatever, that the sentence of death would not be excessive or disproportionate to the penalty imposed in similar cases, considering both the crime and the defendant. It noted cases such as State versus Torres, State versus DeBory, and State versus Moore, and State versus Williams. For his conviction of first-degree murder, the panel sentenced Trail to death. The presiding judge sentenced Trail to 2 years incarceration for the improper disposal of human remains. 2 years. Just 2 years for improper disposal. I'm telling you, that's not very many. And 50 years incarceration for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, both to run consecutively to the murder conviction. Trail represented by trial counsel appeals. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. It is 1:17. Let me see how much longer this one is. I'm going to finish this one page and then we'll stop there and we'll just do number 2, picking up where we left off. And I want to show this other video, guys. I just want to show it. Assignments of errors. Okay, this is where they're saying, well, here's where the mistakes were made. Trail assigns that the district court erred, number 1, death qualifying the jury, number 2, denying his pretrial motion to sever, and number 3, allowing an identified witness to remain in the courtroom during the trial. It's in violation of the court's own sequestration order. And number 4, denying his motion for mistrial, and number 5, denying his motion for a new trial. He also assigns that the sentencing panel erred when balancing the aggravating circumstances against the mitigation circumstances, and by concluding that his case merits death when compared to similar cases. Well, most similar cases do get the death penalty, don't they? That's what I think, Well, of course they do. Look at Chad Daybell. He asserts that Nebraska's death penalty statutory scheme violates the 6th and 8th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and Articles 1 through 6 and 1 through 9 of the Nebraska Constitution because it permits judges, not juries, to make factual findings necessary to impose the death penalty. Standard review. A denial of a motion to sever will not be reversed unless clear prejudice and abuse of discretion are shown, and an appellate court will find such an abuse only where the denial caused the defendant substantial prejudice amounting to a miscarriage of justice. I do not see a miscarriage of justice here. Number 2, it is for the trial court to determine the extent to which a sequestration order will be applied in a given case. This is number 3, an appellate court will not disturb a trial court's decision whether to grant a motion for mistrial unless the court has abused its discretion. And number 4, in a criminal case, a motion for new trial is addressed to the discretion of the trial court. And unless an abuse of discretion is shown, the trial court's determination will not be disturbed. Okay. Number 5, the constitutionality of the statute presents a question of law which an appellate court independently reviews. In reviewing a sentence of death, the Nebraska Supreme Court concludes a de novo review of the record to determine whether the aggravating and mitigating circumstances support the imposition of the death penalty. And then it goes on to this analysis. On direct appeal, Trail challenges the denial of his pretrial motion to prevent death qualifications of the jury to sever the conspiracy of murder charge. He argues that the district court erred during the trial by releasing the victim's mother from sequestration after she testified, and denying his motion for mistrial based on his verbal outbursts and self-harm. He asserts that after the trial, the court erred in denying his motion for a new trial based on that same incident. Finally, Trail asserts that Nebraska's death penalty statutes, under which he was sentenced, are unconstitutional. Alternatively, he asserts that the 3-judge panel erred in determining the sentence of death was not, he asserts the 3-panel judge erred in determining the sentence of death was not excessive or disproportionate to the penalty imposed in similar cases. This is their analysis of this. We address each of these arguments in turn. Death qualifications. Trail argues that district court abused its discretion in forming the veneer to the death penalty was a potential sentence, which led to the questioning of potential jurors about their ability to remain fair and impartial despite their views on the death penalty, which led to removing jurors for cause when they did not remain fair and impartial. In other words, he challenges the death qualification of any juror. The Trail asserts the exclusion of prospective jurors who were opposed to capital punishment subjected him to trial before a more conviction-prone jury. We talked about this in the very beginning, remember, because that's one of the things he was angry about. Then he would have had without the death qualifications. He does not necessarily take issue with the premise that views on capital punishment can interfere with certain potential jurors' ability to perform their duties, but claims death qualifications is unnecessary in Nebraska because the jurors do not impose the sentence. He claims that the jury can remain unbiased without the death qualification because it's possible to keep the issue of the death penalty out of the jurors' minds altogether. Okay. While Trail acknowledges, his name is Trail, but I always want to say Trail, right? While Trail acknowledges Nebraska's statute, states that having opinions such as to preclude a juror from finding the accused guilty of an offense punishable with death is a good cause to challenge the juror. He describes that this is a relic from time periods in Nebraska's history in which it was just widely known that the penalty for murder was a mandatory death sentence. Trail asserts unnecessary death qualifications violates heightened reliability and a standard applicable to capital cases under the 8th Amendment of the Constitution, and then the articles of the Nebraska, I'm not going to say them all, and that's equal to, I'm not going to say all those. And then the 6th Amendment, because it's like all these different statutes, he's listed them all singularly. The 6th Amendment provides in pertinent parts, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to be a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed. And the 6th Amendment is applicable to the states through the 14th Amendment, the 6th and the 14th. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there, and we'll just pick up where we left off on number 2. And I mean, it's very interesting stuff about how this whole case went down. I mean, but isn't it weird how it kind of mimics the Chad and Lori, but theirs was under the pretense of going to heaven, and they're going to leave the 144,000, or this guy was just going to have a coven of witches, and that he was the vampire. It is just, it's fascinating. It is fascinating. Okay, so when I come back to do part 2 of this, I'm going to play this. I want to play this interview that he gave where he sat and just told the law enforcement, well, I could have did it, I could have not did it. Just very nonchalant, didn't care. Yeah, he's a psychopath. He is diagnosed as a psychopath. Anyway, but tomorrow I need to read 3 chapters of her book. I might just I might just do those like, I might pre-record 3 of the chapters of the book, so we can continue on this too, because I need to finish the book, but it's so good. The book is so good. Anyway, you all have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for stopping by. If you did not get to catch all the live, just go catch it on replay. I never, ever, ever say this, but I'm going to say it today. Please hit that like button and slap that little hand thing for the like. Hey, Elizabeth. Let's see. What's she saying? It's sort of cannibalism with a vampire twist. Yes, absolutely. Isn't it gross? I mean, listen, it gives a lot to talk about. That's what I think. I want to know more about him. There's just so many questions. Now I have more questions than I thought I would have after reading this part. So it's very interesting. But anyway, I'll let y'all go for the day, and we'll get back on this, and I'll just put out a post about when I'm going to come back to this. I want to come back to this maybe Friday. Well, tomorrow's Friday, right? I'll get back on it. Anyway, I'll put out a post. Funny is that. Anyway, thank you guys. Please hit that thumbs up, and I'll catch y'all next time. Have a good afternoon. Bye. I could do this for 20 minutes to just keep talking. Bye.